2 continues John Landry's lecture on the Battle of the Coral Sea on the morning of May 7, 1942, when Admiral Fletcher launches an attack on Japan's invasion force for Port Moresby, based on U.S. intelligence reports.
Now is where our intel comes into play. Operation Hypo gives Fletcher a location of Takagi and the Japanese carrier force. So Fletcher then launches a recon mission, sending 10 of his dive bombers north, which is the general location that Takagi has been operating in. However, his bomber scouts head north when they should have been heading east, because that's where Carrier Division 5 is. But as they head north, they actually run into the Japanese invasion force with the carrier Shoho waiting for orders to attack Port Moresby. Our scouts sent a coded contact report back to Fletcher that they've seen 2 carriers and 4 cruisers. This is a misidentified contact. The pilot put in the wrong target code, and actually they see one light carrier, the Shoho. However, Fletcher launches an all-out attack thinking he's attacking Carrier Division 5. Sends 93 aircraft from the Lexington and the Yorktown, and it's about 250 miles to the target. 53 dive bombers, 22 torpedo bombers, and 18 fighters. So upper left-hand corner of this display is where the Soho is. The orange line indicates the path or the track of our attacking aircraft. 1 hour later at 11:10, the Lexington and Yorktown attacked the Soho there as the main body support force. We will have 5 different waves of attack on the Soho. First wave comes from the Lexington. They're dive bombers. They make an attack on the Soho with not much results. Bombs were launched, but no hits. However, a Japanese Zero does take out one of our dive bombers. Second wave comes in from Lexington, another wave of dive bombers. And this time they get 2 hits, penetrating the flight deck, exploding in the hangar deck, and amongst the fully fueled and armed aircraft. Creates a huge fire within the carrier itself. So now we have 2 bomb hits from this second wave. They have penetrated the flight deck and are into the hangar deck of the carrier. This is a picture of the Soho with showing the 2 bomb hits. Third wave comes from Yorktown. They're torpedo bombers. They conduct a pincer attack, and they hit the Shoho with 5 torpedoes from 2 directions. And this is the Shoho after it got hit with the 5 torpedoes. And what the plume there is the actual moment of impact of one of the torpedoes. Another picture of the Soho in serious jeopardy. Fourth wave comes in with dive bombers from the Yorktown. In this case, believe it or not, we get 11 bomb hits on the Soho. And then our 5th wave comes in with torpedo bombers, and we get 10 torpedo hits. And this is the end of the Soho. It's mortally wounded. And the report comes back from the squadron commander, Scratch 1 Flat Top. At this point, 11:30, the Japanese abandoned ship, the Shoho, sinks. And most importantly, Admiral Inoue recalls his invasion force. They go back to Rabaul. So the invasion has been repelled. And now the odds of holding Port Moresby are tipped in the favor of the United States and Australia. Even so, now Admiral Takagi is not quite sure of where Fletcher is with Task Force 17. At 3 in the afternoon on 7 May, the two forces, Fletcher and Takagi, are within 150 miles of one another, as you can see here. And a scout from the Japanese carrier makes contact at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In this case, Australian Task Force 44, the Australian cruiser and destroyer force. The report getting back to Admiral Hera was that the scout saw the enemy aircraft carrier force. This was a misidentified contact. They were actually seeing the Australian Task Force 44, 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers. However, Hera, with thinking he's seeing Task Force 17, he launches 8 scout bombers to go out and attack. 1 hour later, Hera gets impatient and he launches a second wave, even though he has no confirmed ID of the contact. So now we're getting 12 dive bombers and 15 torpedo bombers headed out to attack the Australian task force. First wave then attacks the Australian force, which repels the attack. But later on in the afternoon, the second wave decides to return at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with the second wave has 27 aircraft headed back to the Japanese carriers. And now our radar comes into play. The radar on the Yorktown picks up the second wave of 27 aircraft. Fletcher then orders an attack on the second wave with 11 of our Wildcat fighters. At 6:30 in the evening, 11 of our fighters attacked 27 of the fighters for the Japanese. After the dogfight, we have lost 3 of our fighters, and they have lost 9 of their aircraft, and their formation is decimated. But we're not through yet, because when the 18 aircraft that are left head back to their carrier force, they then are looking, this is nighttime, 8 o'clock in the evening, to fly back to night landing on the Zuikaku. However, they try to land on the Yorktown, of all things. And of course, the Yorktown starts opening up with their anti-aircraft. Japanese fighters get the message and then go out on another search, and they do find the Zuikaku, but their attempt to land at night on the Zuikaku, they lose 11 more aircraft. And so now the Japanese have lost 20 of their aircraft for the Zuikaku. The Zuikaku air wing is shattered and will be taken out of action on 9 May. And it will be unavailable for the Battle of Midway. And of course, Hera pays a steep price for not confirming his contacts. So now on 8 May, after all the searching and the vastness of the Coral Sea, the Japanese carrier forces think they know location of the other force, and they're intent on doing battle. So early morning, the search begins. And the search is made by both Admiral Fitz and Admiral Hera at the same time at 6 o'clock in the morning. Hera launches 7 of his torpedo bombers, searches to the south in the arc that's shown on this display. Fitch gets 18 of his torpedo bombers, and they search in a circular pattern. And eventually, 2 hours later, Lieutenant Joseph Smith locates the Japanese formation, and conversely, the Japanese pilot Kenzo Kano locates Fletcher and Task Force 17. So now both sides have made contact at roughly 8:30 in the morning. They're about 200 miles away, and now comes the Battle of the Titans. On the left, the Yorktown, Lexington, and on the right, Zuikaku and Suikaku. So both task force changed course, closed the distance, some 200 miles. Between 8:30 and 9:15 in the morning, there's a simultaneous launch to attack the enemy forces. Fitch launches an attack of 75 aircraft, 39 Dauntless bombers, 21 torpedo devastators, and then 15 Wildcats. There are four ways that the Americans attacked the Japanese force. First wave comes from the Yorktown and their dive bombers, and they attack the Shokaku. And leading the attack is Commander William O. Birch, and he gets a bomb hit on the Shokaku and gets the first hit of the battle of the Titans. There's one bomb hit on the bow of the carrier. Flight deck has heavy damage and damage in the hangar deck as well. And this is an actual series of pictures of Birch coming in and attacking the Shokaku. The flash that you see on the front there is Birch's hit on the bow of the carrier. Then coming right behind Birch is Lieutenant John Powers, who is going to get the second bomb hit on the Shokaku. So as they're coming in, Powers is attacked by a Japanese Zero, and he gets hit. And his plane is set afire, but he continues on his bomb run and presses his attack on the Shokaku. And at 200 feet, Powers is unable to pull out, but he does release his bomb, hits the flight deck and penetrates it into the hangar deck and causes major damage to the Shokaku. And unfortunately, he's killed in action because he can't pull out because of the damage to his plane. Right behind the first attack comes another wave torpedo attack on the Shokaku from our Devastator bombers. And unfortunately, all our torpedoes miss. Then 30 minutes later, there's a third wave of dive bombers coming from the Lexington. Again, the Shokaku gets attacked. And this time, there's another bomb hit toward the stern of the ship. Zuikaku is under cloud cover, and then momentarily it comes out from the cloud cover and it becomes a target. The Lexington attacks the Zuikaku with dive bombers. And comes into the attack, and unfortunately, both the bombs that were launched missed the target. No direct damage. And then a few more moments later, the fourth wave of torpedo bombers come in and attack the Shokaku. We launch 11 torpedoes and we get no hits. We probably do get hits because this raises the issue of the defect in our Mark 13 torpedoes, where the torpedo detonation mechanism was failing. And we had to work on that and didn't get our torpedoes to be effective, at least the Mark 13, until 1944. The Japanese have launched an attack on us at 9 o'clock in the morning. Takagi or Hara launches 69 aircraft. And 2 hours later, two waves of torpedo attacks are made on the Yorktown with 4 torpedo bombers, and the Yorktown is able to evade that torpedo attack. There's a 14 torpedo bomber attack on the Lexington, and they conduct a pincer attack on the Lexington, and they get 2 torpedo hits. Did significant damage on the interior and ruptured the water main, but the Lexington was still able to make 24 knots. Then comes another attack on the Lexington, this time dive bombers. And the dive bombers get 2 hits, one straight down the stack, exploding within the ship, and another one on the forward part of the flight deck, penetrating into the hangar deck, causing some significant damage to the Lexington. This is a illustration of the 2 torpedo hits and the 2 bomb hits on the Lexington. Still, the Lexington was able to maintain 24 knots. This is an actual wartime picture of the Lexington and its hit with the bombs and torpedoes. Immediately after that attack, the Yorktown gets attacked with dive bombers, and there is a direct hit in the middle of the flight deck, penetrates down through the hangar deck and into the lower deck, exploding 4 decks down, killing or wounding 66. It knocks out our superheated boilers, imparts major structural damage to the Yorktown. It's a picture of from the hangar deck looking up to the flight deck. And this is 4 decks down where the damage control parties are trying to repair the damage that was done. There were near misses that also inflicted structural damage on the Yorktown. We had heroic efforts from Lieutenant Ricketts, leading the damage control teams to keep the Yorktown afloat. And indeed, the Yorktown lives to fight another day and actually fight at the Battle of Midway. So within 30 minutes, the Battle of the Titans is over. At this point, the Japanese believe they've sunk 2 carriers, the Lexington and the Yorktown. However, the Yorktown goes back to Pearl Harbor, and the Lexington is still afloat. Injured, but the damage control parties have managed to keep her afloat and able to make some headway. And so there's some, at noon on the 8th of May, there's some optimism about the Lexington. However, just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's a giant explosion. Fumes from the ruptured gas tank and the hangar deck ignited with an electric motor and ignited the fumes, and they had a massive explosion just before 1300 hours. 3 hours later, unfortunately, there's another explosion that rocked the forward part of the ship. You can see an aircraft that's cartwheeling outward from the explosion. At 3:30 in the afternoon, there's another explosion, which really puts the end to the Lexington. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 1700 hours, captain orders to abandon ship. And you can see the sailors climbing down the ropes on the side of the aircraft carrier Lexington. Then at 6 o'clock in the evening, the captain, Fitch, and the executive officer decide they have to leave the ship and and the Lexington now is doomed. And we send the destroyer Phelps out and put 5 torpedoes in the Lexington and scuttle it. Unfortunately, 216 of the ship's crew go down with the ship. And now we see a success. Admiral Nimitz has thwarted the invasion of Port Moresby by the Japanese. We have 4 Medal of Honor recipients: Lieutenant Powers, damage control, Lieutenant Ricketts, along with his Chief Petty Officer Peterson, and then a Lexington pilot, William E. Hall. When Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they had 6 aircraft carriers. Now they're going to attack the Battle of Midway with 4 carriers. That would be the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, John, for the wonderful presentation. It's never easy to describe oceanic naval battles across such wide areas. So I appreciate the work you put into the graphics to help it be understandable. That's well done.
Yeah,
I know that, of course, the Coral Sea was, the first time the carriers never came in sight of each other, and it was a naval aviation engagement. But I also know that for some reason, Midway often gets that credit, and it's not true. It was the Coral Sea. Is there any reason? I'm just curious why the Battle of Midway would have had that kind of mistaken distinction in general public understanding, but it's actually the Battle of the Coral Sea that was a pivotal naval aviation moment.
Yeah, I've always looked at the Battle of Coral Sea as kind of a stepchild, if you will. And in fact, it's just the opposite. You see that 2 of their newest carriers, the most lethal carriers on the ocean at that time, got knocked out of the Battle of Midway. And it's no small matter that the Japanese attacked with 4 carriers instead of 6 at the Battle of Midway. And it's no small matter that our intel was able to decode or break the code of the Japanese and thwart the secret attack that the Japanese were depending on for the attack on Port Moresby.
Could be because of the fact that Midway's closer to Hawaii than Coral Sea.
Much closer, absolutely.
John, thanks for the presentation. That was great. Again, the Japanese did lose 2 of their carriers in the Battle of Coral Sea, and we were able to tow home one of our 2 carriers, losing the other, correct?
That is correct. The Zuikaku's air wing got decimated in that jump that Fletcher got on them, and then we hit the flight deck of the Zuikaku. So both of them had to be sent back to Japan and were not available for the Battle of Midway.
Is there any note as to why Yamamoto made the comment of waking the giant? Why he said that?
Yes, there is. If you go back to the early 1940s, Yamamoto spent some time in the United States. He actually did some studying at Harvard. He was a liaison in Washington, and he got to know the U.S. to the point where he was well aware of our military-industrial complex and our attitude, our work ethics, and the like. On the other hand, Tojo, who spent some time in the United States, developed an opposing view that we were nothing but a bunch of slackers, party goers, and the minute they punched us in the nose at Pearl Harbor, we would go, okay, we're going to sue for peace. 2 opposing views of America. Yamamoto knew very well that if we did attack America, it would be the kind of sad event that it turned out to be for them in the Pacific War.
One quick question is, from all this, what can we learn as applies to today, the Ukraine's habit now of trying to defeat the Soviet Navy, and that in Taiwan, they're looking at a significant minefield approach to thwarting China.
If I'll pinwheel off your question. I'm not answering it directly as you phrased it, but the model for Ukraine is the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. If you go back and study that, that is a time when we were at a point which I quote a book on the subject titled 1 Minute to Midnight. We were a fraction of a heartbeat away from thermonuclear war in Cuba. The lessons that we learned in Cuba need to be applied to our eyeball to eyeball in the Ukraine with Putin on the other side.
All right, thank you so much. Let's give him a wonderful round of applause.
We're always delighted to come back. So, I'd be happy to come back and do other presentations. We love your venue, and the fact that you're architects and engineers, that's close to my heart as well.
Well, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough. That was so outstanding. Before you leave us, we have a certificate of appreciation. Can you see it?
I can. Yes, thank you.
We'll have to mail it to you. It's a certificate of appreciation in recognition of your presentation on the Battle of the Coral Sea, Battle of the Titans. Thank you again. We'll mail this to you.
Everybody have a good day.
Thank you.
Engineers and architects of Hawaii welcome your comments on this program and any of our recent programs. We encourage your direct participation in this community outreach. So please email us your comments and ideas at eahawaii@gmail.com.